Hello and welcome to Civic Cipher. I am your host. My mother calls me Quentin Ward, but my friends call me Q. I appreciate you guys tuning in with me today. I have a esteemed, I think I'll say esteemed, try to push my boy's pedestal up because he deserves it. Esteemed friend of mine, friend of the show, and pioneer in the medical health and equipment industry, friend of mine from Bowling Green State University, member Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, and area vice president of women's health sales for Natera, Mr. Michael Malone Jr.
What's going on? Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate you having me on tonight.
Thank you for making some time for me, Mike. Don't get to see my brother as often as I would like, but glad he was able to take some time away from the family, tell them thank you for me, and apologize to them for me stealing you away on the night where you guys could be hanging out and relaxing. But I really thought that it was important for us to talk to people about your company and about what you do. So before we get into what you do specifically with relation to diversity and inclusion, tell us a little bit about Natera in general.
In general, we help women have healthy pregnancies. So we're a genetics company that looks at the fingerprint or of the DNA to see what is different between the baby and the mom, to see if there's anything that's causing the baby to possibly have a chromosome abnormality. That's the basis of our business. And then of course from there, we've expanded into oncology, cancer, organ transplants, and even to the point where people have had losses, we can look to see possibly why.
And do you guys work directly with clients, or do you go through healthcare providers or hospitals? How do you guys have that interaction from your company to expecting mothers?
Most of our interaction happens with the physician. We're essentially the educator of the provider. So a lot of the information gets funneled through them to the patient, same along with the feedback. So it's our job to educate the physician so that the physician can educate themselves on the best way to provide the best care and treatment for their patients.
Okay, so you guys teach the doctors and the medical staff that they have about your technology, and then they present that as an option for clients who are expecting mothers.
Correct.
Okay, how long have you been in this industry, Mike?
Oh man, for the industry, about 15 years. With this company, this is my 10th year.
Okay.
So I'm going into my 10th year.
How recent did you guys split off into those other areas outside of just prenatal?
We would really the last 2 years. So we've been doing a lot of research and development. We kind of kept it secret for a while, and then publicly announced it 2 years ago for Natera, our oncology side, and then this year, or in 2020, we announced our organ transplant.
Okay, and you guys do this across the entire country?
We're global, even overseas.
Okay,
so we're pretty big overseas as well.
And where are you located now, Mike?
I live in Atlanta.
Okay, so are you specific to the East Coast? Do you personally get to travel, around the country and around the world, or do you have an area that you're assigned to?
Yeah, I feel like I have one of the best jobs because I have the southern half of the United States. So, my counterpart likes to joke with me and say I have the best and most expensive real estate and not the coldest real estate. And then the ongoing joke is, where do you live or where are you staying at today, right? Because I've moved throughout the Southeast. Ever since I left Bowling Green, I kind of stayed put mostly down in the southeastern corridor. Spent some time in South Florida, currently live in Atlanta. It's my second stint back in Atlanta. Lived in South Carolina. My wife was in Mississippi, so kind of had different spots throughout the Southeast. But luckily, my job, because I have half the country, I can essentially live anywhere that I want to in the U.S. I don't have the opportunity to go overseas like I have volunteered to do.
I'm
But
sure.
every time something comes up, I'm always trying to rub elbows with the people that are on the organ transplant side because they do a lot of traveling overseas. But
Okay.
one of these days, hopefully, I can take advantage of that.
With the choice of living anywhere, it's really interesting that you chose Atlanta, Georgia. That's kind of the epicenter for people that look like us in this country. Did that have anything to do with why you picked Atlanta?
No, man. Actually, the interesting thing is when I met Cheyenne and we had more intimate conversations and we started dating. The first time I actually met her, she was coming back from a family reunion from Atlanta,
Okay.
and that
So
sparked
this
the
is when
conversation because my
is this when we
this
were
is when
still
we
in
were in
school?
BG.
Okay.
Yep, this is when we were still in BG. It's her senior year. She was about to graduate, and it was going into my junior year. And we met at Uptown. She was coming up the steps. I'm sitting there chilling like I think I'm too cool, you know. And we just kind of hit it off, had a conversation. She told me she just came back, in the previous weekend from a family reunion, and we sparked our conversation got sparked because I was like, hey, my cousin goes to Spelman. And what did you think about Atlanta? And she would not stop talking about Atlanta.
Wow.
And so, luckily, after college, I had the opportunity to play professional football. And as I was going through that process, just so happened to land a contract down in Georgia. It was initially with the Macon Knights, and after things didn't work out, stayed my butt in Atlanta because I liked the aura, I loved the feel, like to see us black folks doing well. And I remember telling my dad, I said, being down in Atlanta reminds me that nobody should have an excuse not to be able to make a little bit of money, because everybody down here, especially the black folks, have found some way to monetize something, and that should keep everybody motivated. So that's why I really love, and that's what I love about being in this city, because you see young black folks doing, some big things.
I actually forgot that you were in Macon because my mom's from Macon. So I forgot that you
That's
were
right.
even down there. My family still has a restaurant downtown Macon. It's a historic site now. So if the next time I come to Atlanta, hopefully this year I can come and see you and the kids. I got to take you guys down there to get some food, man. I want to speak to you a little bit about our show and why I felt like when you mentioned to me what you were doing, that it would be perfect to have you on. Ramses, who is my co-host and co-producer of the show, went on a cross-country road trip with me. We started in Tampa and drove back to Phoenix, but as you could imagine, we had to stop in Atlanta. And he's from Compton, California, and had never been to Georgia at all, but specifically Atlanta. And for all the reasons that you just named, we saw black doctors, black lawyers, black business owners. You driving through really nice neighborhoods with really nice cars, and all of the people were black. And he'd never seen or experienced anything like that, Mike. So he was caught off guard in the best way. Immediately start talking about, man, how do we figure out how to get back down here for something? Do we need to move the show down here? Do we need to move our families down here? Like, this is just really, really different. And similar to what you said, the aura just really, really rubbed off on him. But Atlanta is a very, very unique black city in the South. I think people sometimes misinterpret that all of Georgia looks and feels like Atlanta, and that is kind of far from the truth. So, after a really tumultuous 2020, especially the summer of George Floyd, there was some tension that rose up in our country and really around the world, and put a microscope on race relations, police brutality, racial injustice, and a lot of things that our people have been dealing with for a long time. And we had this idea, since we worked in radio, that we should shine some light on things that are important specifically to black people. So that was kind of the brainchild for this show. And I remember when I sent you the press release about the show and you read it, when you messaged me and you sent me the information about what you were doing, I was excited, bro. I was like, I really hope that we do have time to make this happen, and soon, because I think what you're doing is important. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of scope and context as to why I thought it was so perfect, and I think you did as well. So can you tell people a little bit about what it is that you're doing at Natera with regards to inclusion and diversity?
Yeah, first of all, I want to commend you for having this program to talk about that, because I think we've been suppressed too long to not have the voice as strong and as powerful as we can be to make a change. And I think that's what even for me moving to Atlanta has showcased that even if you're a minority, and it's like, as you mentioned, it's very easy to forget. Like you go even 20 miles outside of Atlanta radius, I mean, it's the redneck of the rednecks.
Yeah.
They act like they've never seen a black person before. But nonetheless, I think, when all that happened with my organization that I'm with now, Natera, I sat back because I wanted to see organically how they were going to respond.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want it to seem like it was forced. I didn't want it to seem like, it was a Me Too type of response. I would just, lay back, just kind of waiting to see if somebody was going to approach me, how they were going to approach me, and as an organization, how are we going to respond? Now, before I kind of get into how we responded and why I was thinking that, I think it's very important to the executive leadership team. So these are the CEOs, the CFOs, the COOs, and all these C's, these C-suite individuals.
Yeah.
I have an opportunity to present to them all the time. And when you're on a Zoom and you're looking at the boxes of faces that don't represent how I think, how you think,
Wow.
or what we've been through, right? But yet the community that we serve mostly are communities of color. And it's very interesting that, sometimes some of the initiatives that we put in place don't necessarily take that into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
But I do got to commend the company, even though that they don't have somebody of color or black, I should say, sitting on the board. I do think that they do, respond to feedback very positively, because we are an innovative company, and it showcases in this organization that I've been able to find. So essentially, I started getting those emails, started seeing, Instagram, different companies responding and showing support for Black Lives Matters. And then just out of the woodworks, like individuals within the company just reached out to me, like, can't believe the company's not doing this. What do you think of us being silent? What does this mean? Just all kinds of different emails. And I was like, hey, you know what, let's just see how Natera handles it. And I had one of the executive leaders come to me, called me on the phone early in the morning. It was like 8 o'clock East Coast time. So I know it was at least five something, 3 hours back in LA. The Bay Area is where we're located. And, the conversation was, hey, Mike, I feel really embarrassed to have to call you and ask you this, but I think it's my duty to at least, get your insight. But I want to know from you, like, given the situation that's, that we have in our environment and Black Lives Matter, how can we help? What should we do? Can you help us get, the support for our own individual employees, and start an organization so that we can support them in any way, shape, or form.
Wow.
And I was kind of thrown back, and they said that my name had come up a few times in the board meetings, and so I responded by saying, hey, I'm more than happy to do this. As a matter of fact, I was waiting for you or somebody to reach out to me to just ask me like what we thought, because we felt like nobody had reached out to any folk of color to get their opinion or thoughts, to see what they're emotionally going through based on everything that we're seeing in the news. And he said, yeah, so tell me what we need to do. And I said, before I start anything, I really have to get your support, that you're going to give me full reign. I got full support, anything that we need to make sure that we support the individuals, especially the Black community in our organization, to continue to diversify our organization so that we can continue to be, as powerful as I know we can be. I'm on board. But as soon as I feel like I'm being dictated, or that, this is for show or a marketing ploy, I'll be the very first person out of here. And they said, look, that is not going to happen. You got full reign. You name it what you want. I mean, they literally gave me the keys to the Benz and said, go drive and go do your thing. And so that's what I've been able to do. So we started, it's kind of a generic name. We call it Diversity and Inclusion Group, acronym DIG. but actually it's become very catchy within the organization. We got what can you dig in? Let's dig out. Digging forward, marching out. So we have all these different plays on that particular word, which has been very catchy. And so essentially, this group is really founded for two things. So one is to bring more visibility amongst us minorities, with the emphasis on the Black individuals in our organization, so that they can be represented and have a voice, so that they have an opportunity to continue to grow within the organization into leadership roles, right? I think, when you look at a lot of companies, the ground level or the entry level positions are historically or mostly minorities or even Blacks. But as you start going up the ladder, you start seeing less and less Black folk. And so the main vision is to try to get more people of color, more minorities into these higher positions. The second piece is that we really, and this is more so in the mission, without all the various jargon that we put into the mission, the basis is only a workplace. We don't want people to be walking on eggshells and feeling like, hey, am I saying something that's racist? But I want you to be aware about what you're about to say, right? I want you to understand what I've been through. And, I haven't been living through a privileged life, and my life is not like yours, right? And I think the biggest thing that I've learned is like when people say, I don't see color. Like, to me, that's very irritating, right? Because if you don't see color, that means you don't understand there's a difference between what I've been through versus what you've been through, right? I get the concept that you're trying to treat everybody equal, but you can't treat everybody equal if they haven't been through the same process that you have been, right? And so I think it's about educating, all of our people at the organization, and especially starting from the higher ups down. And so I'm very proud to say that I have this big initiative and this training program that's already getting ready to launch next month. But that training program starts with the executive leadership team. And it's only geared towards them about what they're thinking, how they view things, what their perspectives are, and to get their feedback. And then from there, we're going to launch it company-wide. And this will be an ongoing program, hopefully, beyond my time here at Natera.
It's really interesting. You already spoke to something that I was going to ask you later about the pipeline to leadership. A lot of times, like you said, your ground level, your entry level positions will be people of color, will be Black people, Hispanic people, but all of your executives are typically white. And even when it comes to hiring and training people for those higher level positions, a lot of times companies will reach outward and pull people in instead of reaching down and pulling people up. So I'm glad that you understood that it was important to have something in place to train, build, and empower people of color that are already in the company to move up into those, higher level management, middle management, executive positions. I knew you before they reached out to you, thought it was important to do what you're doing. Give us a little insight as to why you waited to let them present it to you instead of you presenting it to them, and why you questioned or not questioned, but made it clear to them that you didn't want this to be something we were doing for public relations, but something that was authentic and genuine.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because at first I didn't know. I think, let me back up. I think all of us, when you're a minority in an organization, especially when you have, some people can look at it as power, you can call it influence.
Influence, yes, sir.
So I think there's like different things but when you're a minority in a certain position, what you say and what you do has a big impact on a lot of people. And not only that, I was also trying to think about what I could do if if they felt otherwise, right? If the organization didn't agree with what I was going to stand for, I wanted to make sure I had a backup plan. Okay. So I was actually thinking about all of these things together. But the main thing that I really wanted to see, as I mentioned earlier, is I wanted it to be organic. I wanted them to be able to go to town hall without having anything or anyone come directly to them and answer some of the questions I knew was going to come at town hall. Mm-hmm. I wanted them to, because I think it wasn't about like trying to say, I told you so, or, yeah, now what kind of thing. It was more about, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Correct.
And I wanted it to be organic. I wanted them to feel inadequate in a certain area, because a lot of times we're so focused in one specific, dimension or division. In this case, obviously women's health and genetics, but a lot of times we forget about investing in our own people that have helped us get to that particular point. And so the reason why I waited is because I was still trying to contemplate how I wanted to do things, how I was going to respond. And even if they didn't come to me, I still had a plan that I was going to do and leverage my influence amongst, my people, our people, right? And my organization that I have influence over. But I was just waiting back because I wanted to see who was going to, because I think those that didn't say anything, those that did say something at that point, and that those that haven't said anything since or that are now coming out, to me, tells the whole story about some of the things that I had already been thinking about. Tells the story about some of the things I didn't know. Now it's very clear, and some of the things that are being magnified. And the only person that can really change that is that person. And there's things that I can do to help. And I think, these training programs and these educational resources that we're providing can help in that respect. But, I think ultimately I wanted it to be very organic. I wanted it to be genuine. I wanted people to know that, when I start this and had this movement, that it was truly coming from the heart. It was not coming from, the CEO that was telling me to do this, or I was trying to force him to do something. I really wanted to be genuine and organic and grow and have some momentum around that.
You brought up something that I think a lot of people don't even consider, especially in the position that you're in. What if they don't feel the same way as I do with regard to minority inclusion, diversity, with regard to what's going on in our country right now? Like, what if when they do finally say something, it's totally against my principles and what I stand for, and that you were in a position where you had to consider, okay, what are my options if we're on the opposite side of this thing? Was there a sense of like an exhale when they did finally come to you and they did express what you hoped that they would?
Interesting. You bring up another good point. I actually felt like there was a little bit more. I hate to use the word pressure, because I feel like pressure is like you get, pushed into something that you might not necessarily feel comfortable, or you feel like you're forced to do something that you really don't want to do. But I felt like there was a lot more weight added to my back now. And why did I feel that? Is because we've never done anything like this in the organization. They're counting on one person to have this vast majority of influence to make a change in certain individuals or the culture of the company that's been there for years, decades, right? And that now was put on me. And so we're, a market cap of over $10 billion, right? So a lot of these things come with, as I mentioned, some people could call it extra stress or pressure, but I welcomed it. I really wanted to take it on because I knew I was going to be able to make an impact. If it wasn't just in just one person's life, it was going to be well worth it. And so I was like, okay, fine. Now I got to develop all these resources. I got to make sure we have the funds, we got the right people in place, and I need to build my infrastructure. Mind you, I got to do all this while still managing a sales team of over 100 people. Right, with the company goals as a public company, and making sure that the investors, those that have equity, are also being rewarded. So it was a burden at the time, but it was something I was welcome to do, and I knew that if I took the right steps, like I have been throughout my life, I would meet the right people. I always keep God first, so I always had faith. I just knew, just by genuinely being myself and doing the right thing, that things were going to take care of itself. And it's been an amazing journey so far, and we just started this, back in August. And the type of individuals that I've met, especially minorities, Black men, Black women, lesbian and gay individuals, the Asian community, like just everybody that I've met on this journey, the vendors that I've been able to partner up with has just been amazing. And I think these type of networks that I've been able and relationships that I've been able to develop shows how powerful we as a minority group can really be if we just stand together and don't divide each other, don't fight against each other, but really, embrace us, right? Diversity, essentially. And I think that because I've been able to develop those relationships and they see my work ethic, I don't really think of twice about what would happen if I had to leave or from Natera, because I don't think anything would change from the lifestyle or anything else that I've been able to do. But I think I would continue to still be able to make the impact and influence others and continue to motivate people to be the best that they can.
You spoke about, and everything that you just said is super important. A lot of the things that you're touching on are super inspiring too, Michael. So I'm really, really glad that even though it could have been a burden, because you do already have so much on your plate, that you still welcomed it, you still saw the value, and you still thought it was important, so that you pursued it anyway. Even though it added a lot to you, it was something that you welcomed because you knew how important it was. But you mentioned earlier somebody, or not somebody specifically, but just the idea of someone not seeing color and wanting to treat people equal. But we all know treating people equal, treating people fairly, and treating people the same are not synonyms, right? A person really, I think they think they're saying what's right when they say I don't see color, because it's impossible not to. I think it's important to acknowledge that you do see color and to still treat a person right and fairly, even though you do. When you're dealing with inclusion and diversity within a culture that already exists, and inclusion and diversity in hiring, what are some of the challenges that you saw then that you've already seen some growth or some progress from since you guys started the DIG program?
So I think we still have a long way to go, man. Like this whole suppression and racism, as they call it, systematic. There's a reason why they call it systematic, is because it's built in either that individual's way of thinking from their parents, or the system that they grew up in, the community, the village, if you will, right? So it's going to take a while. But what I've seen is, previously to starting this organization, this group, there wasn't as much discussion about the lack of diversity. Every now and then you would hear, us Black folks talking amongst each other, why don't we have more Black people here? Why don't we have more Indians, and so on and so forth. And but now that we've kind of developed this employee resource group, a DIG, like people are really expressing how they feel about all kinds of things within the organization. And you would never know that had we. I've been here again almost 10 years. This is the first time I've seen all these people talk openly now about the various things that they want to see change. So I feel like that, if there was anything that showcases, the baby steps that we're taking. We had a big program last night, and we had some people that really were engaged and interacting, and again, very vocal about certain situations that they experienced, or certain perspectives they have about the company as well. And we recorded it, and we're putting that on the internet so everybody in the company can hear and see it. And I know it's going to build some momentum, because a lot of times people get afraid of their job security and aren't vocal. And I think this is a platform where people can feel secure and safe and speak what's on their mind without any negative repercussions, given that we're the resource and the support group dedicated for them. So I think that is what's going to really start this culture of embracing diversity a little more. I think where we didn't also think about before, and that we think more about now, is even the individuals that we have in our candidacy pool for various openings, right? I don't think that was something consciously on their mind. It was, as you mentioned, you know what, I know this person, I worked with this person, bring them on. At least that's what it appeared from the outside, right? So they hired the people that they worked with or that look like them for the most part. And I feel like now, consciously, people are really trying to have a diverse pool of candidates, and we're also helping them in that capacity, because I do have a couple of partnerships that I've already started, that I've linked up with, where we're going to be pulling candidates and internships and mentorships from the HBCU community.
What you just touched on, I think, is super important. I think in a lot of cases, nepotism is passive. And I mean that in a way where if I worked in your field as one of your close friends at this point, we're 22 years friends at this point. If I worked in your field, it would just be top of mind. I do this. I know that Quentin is good at this. Let me speak to him about a position that we have open. That's what I like to call passive nepotism. It's natural. When you care about somebody, you respect them, and you know they're good at their job. If you're in the same field, you look out for each other in that way. But then there's built into that systemic racism a level of exclusion where you automatically disqualify some candidates, based on things that have nothing to do with their talent or their resume, and only to do with what they look like and how they speak. In your case, I think it's important that as a person who works in leadership, that you've made employees feel supported and empowered to express themselves about concerns that they have, because typically leadership leaves that to HR. You know what I mean? Like they just kind of push that off to human resources, let them deal with it, and we're going to continue to uphold the status quo. So I think it's important and necessary that not just yourself, but your leadership understood that support and that empowerment was just as important, so that the people on your team and within your organization can be honest about how they felt and the things that they needed, without feeling like they would exclude themselves or put themselves in a position where their jobs were at risk somehow. So, I'm glad that you touched on that, because I think that's something that's, excessively important.
It's something interesting that you just mentioned about HR. As I mentioned, it was announced in August that I was going to, start this DIG group. And from August until now, so September, October, November, December, about 5 months, I've been able to do more from the HR perspective than HR has done since I've been in the organization. Wow. From the diversity recruitment, from the partnerships to help get diverse candidates, to linking up with various individuals so that we can get more exposure. You know that more people are more likely to apply to a position in a company if they know the company. And these various vendors that I spoke to that link up and partner with HBCUs, they didn't even know who Natera was. Wow. And you know why that's disappointing? The reason why it's very disappointing for me is because the entry level position, people can make over six figures, right? And for us as a Black community not to be aware of that and think that we have to be pigeonholed to be only in this sector of certain industries to be able to hit six figures coming straight out of college, or possibly even before you graduate. Again, it's the same systematic process of trying to keep us where we are instead of growing. Mm-hmm. And those things are eye-opening to me as I continue on with my research and encounters and building my relationship with various individuals on this journey. And, the other thing that sticks out to me too is I remember when I got promoted from the sales rep, we call them clinical field specialists, AKA CFSs. And when I got promoted to regional director, the first thing I was tasked to do is essentially hire some folks, essentially to replace me, because we were expanding. So it went from me going to manager, and I need to hire 5 people. And each one of, I'm like not even being conscious, I just wanted to have the best people on my team so we can work collaboratively to crush our goals. And when you look back at it, I had a Black woman, I had a white male, I had a white female, I had another white female, and a Black male, all as my first hires. And the comment that was made to me at the time, it was, "Are you trying to, have the most diverse team award? Are you trying to get the most diverse team award?" I said, "Are you kidding me? I said, no, I'm going to show you we're going to have the best team award. We're going to be the MVP. And I don't care who's on my team. I'm picking the best people based on my interview process. And even at that case, some of them I did know. I had some background and some experience. But those type of comments, you reflect back at the time, it didn't really it was interesting, and it didn't really hit home until I replayed it a few times. But that those types of comments suggest certain things, right? And again, that's like in a passive way, as you were just talking about. And I realize it now, all these years, as I started moving up in my various roles, how different I've been thinking about diversity and inclusion versus my colleagues. And that's the reason why not only in the last 3 years I've been the best performing leader, but really the last 7 years. And not to mention, before getting promoted, the top rep. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because I think that's why diversity is very important. The reason diversity is you get experience levels, perspectives, skills, and responses so that we collectively can be powerful. And that's why we've been great. And I've inherited other teams that are all vanilla. When I say vanilla, I'm not saying mostly white. It's just the same. Like that team's the same as that team, and they all were hired by a same one individual, and it shows why they've been where they are, right? That why they're stuck where they are is because they have no diversity. They have no different viewpoint or perspective to help us get to the next level. And so that's why I think that this is important, because as an organization, I think it's going to make us a lot more effective and efficient, and a hell of a lot more productive, because everybody's going to learn from one another.
Yeah, I remember 1999 when we first visited Bowling Green, and I remember meeting your dad. And your dad might not remember this, you might not remember this, but one of the simple thing that he said to me, because we hadn't decided we were going there yet, and I think we were I think you, me, Pinch, and I think Jeremy, not Jared, but Jeremy, we're kind of looking at each other like, yo, if you come, I'm gonna come, and if you come, I'm gonna come, kind of thing. And your dad said something to me that was very, very simple, but that I never forgot. And it was just simply, if you guys come here, look out for each other. Like he said it, and he said it with the tone and the attitude he said it with was very serious. It wasn't like some flaccid comment to just throw out there as some random dad advice. He said it to us like it was important. You know what I mean? Like it is vital that if you guys come here together, that you make it your business to look out for each other. And I don't think he knew that, 20 years later, we would still not just be in touch, but, be the best of friends. Coming from where we come from, Michael, and, being a part of a really good group of guys playing football, a really great group of guys in our fraternity, moving on as educated men from, college students to working professionals. I know you experience this because I do, where people kind of assume your background is way different than what it actually is. We're from Detroit, Michigan, and Portsmouth. We're not from Beverly Hills and Bel Air. You know what I mean? But sometimes when you present yourself well, you're articulate, you're professional, people assume that you've been coddled and you come from this silver spoon background, and that life has been, a privilege for you, not understanding that not only did you have to work super hard, but you had to overcome to get where you are. Do you ever encounter colleagues that make that mistake of thinking that your background is way different than what it actually is?
Oh yeah. So the interesting story around that is as we continue to expand, we had one of the reps that was covering Portsmouth, Ohio as part of their territory.
Wow.
And they found out I was from Portsmouth. That I got a text message. It was like, hold on, are you from this Portsmouth? Because, it was one of those areas that she didn't really go to much because it was high Medicaid. it looks like a ran down because it was the heavy metal industry,
Yeah.
right? A lot of the stuff got moved from Portland, Ohio, up to Pittsburgh and to Detroit
Yeah.
back then. And so she was like, "This is where you're from," and it's other than a small pocket. There's not really that many, black folks either. And I was like, "Yep." He probably drove right by my high school. Portsmouth High School is where I went. And she was just completely caught off guard because, most of the time when people see me, I'm in my, nice suit, got the tie on. Other than now in COVID, I usually have a nice little shape up going. Look like I spent a little bit of money on my grooming, but they just couldn't understand. And also the way that I speak, a lot of times when we do have various, not only company meetings, but if we're talking to a vendor, a lot of times I'll keep the camera off just because it's interesting how when I end up turning the camera on 10, 15 minutes later into the conversation to see their faces because they just did not expect to see a brother, talking to them and asking, certain questions that I may be asking. So let alone be in genetics and then talking the lingo like a genetic counselor would. So it's very interesting how that you get these assumptions just because either the way you speak, the way you walk, or even the color of your skin, and a lot of times even where you consider your hometown.
Yeah.
And that's what makes us, right? Like this, if I didn't go through all of that, like I'm not embarrassed. I'm not, shy to say where I came from. I'm not going to continue to embellish it.
Yeah.
Like it's the best thing that, that happened to me, but I grew from it. I learned from it. And, that's why I've been able to be able to get to where I am now.
It's incredible. And I knew that specifically the way that you speak and the way that you articulate would be the key reason why people would misjudge you immediately. And it's really cool to have as much time as I've had, with you as a friend and as a brother, knowing where we come from and where we are now. And I almost laughed when I asked you because I'm like, I go through this, so I know for sure Mike goes through, people completely misrepresenting their idea of where they think he started and what they think his background is like. You spoke earlier about HBCUs and about students that come from those universities having never heard of the company. What are some of the initiatives that you guys are trying to put in place to change that? Because like you said, people will never apply to a company if they don't even know that the industry, the company, or the positions exist.
Yeah, very good question. I want to showcase the company because a lot of people know that they can make a lot of money in tech, and we are essentially a technology company. We're based in the Silicon Valley, in the Bay Area, but we happen to leverage our technology in the diagnostics world, or in my case, women's health and genetics. And what I want to be able to do is showcase our organization as Natera, as a place where people can come, feel welcomed, and learn and grow and make a lot of money while doing that. And we partnered up with HBCU 20 by 20, who is embedded with all of the HBCUs throughout the country. And we're going to have some webinars to showcase our organization. They've asked me, to sit on some of their conferences where they talk about leadership and what does it take to get to certain positions, VP levels and above, which I'm very excited and honored to be part of. But I think, these are some of the things that I want to be able to highlight, for others so that they don't have to feel like I have to be an athlete to make 6 or 7 or 8 figures. I have to, start here, going door to door, selling, what magazines or whatever the case, vacuum cleaners, to eventually get the opportunity. I want people to know straight out of college, there are some opportunities out there that you just have to do a little bit of research. And I think it's our job to try to showcase our organization and show that we are welcoming diverse candidates into our organization, because we're just continue to take off, we continue to expand, especially in this environment of COVID. We've been doing massive hirings, And yet people in the HBCUs and the alumni, other than the ones that I know, that you know, that we've been talking to,
Mm-hmm.
we've been able to bring on board. And we need to have, more visibility amongst all of our folks so that we can continue to be as powerful as we possibly can as an organization and as a community.
If you are just tuning in, this is Civic Cipher. I am your host, Q Ward. I have my esteemed guest from Natera, Mr. Michael Malone Jr. Man, I hate if you're just tuning in because you've missed a lot of really good information. But, we are available on all your platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and a bunch of your local FM platforms as well. Michael and I have been speaking about diversity and inclusion, specifically in the medical and tech fields, and why those things are important. So again, if you're just tuning in, we still got a little bit for you. Follow us at Civic Cipher on Twitter and Instagram, civiccipher.com. You can get any information that you need about the show. You can get past shows. Visit us on YouTube as well. So you get to this position where it is important to you that diversity and inclusion be as important to you as they are the company you work for. They bring you this opportunity where they've now put you in a position where you are able to influence the lives and careers of people that come from very, very diverse backgrounds. It felt like pressure at one point. You understood, though, that it was a privilege. You're a few months into it now. It's starting to grow wings. It's starting to take the shape that you wanted. Is it something that you look back now and you're like, wow, we did that? Or do you know that you still have so much further to go?
I always reflect back and I'm like, not only wow, we did that, but damn, how did we do that? Given all the constraints and the timelines that, we were trying to push everything into. Even back when I was playing football, pledging, military, it was like all these things. I look back, I'm like, how did I do that? And I think all that built me to be able to handle and showcase myself here. And I think what the biggest thing that, I'm proud to say is, look, we as a the minorities in the organization have helped me launch this program that we've never had. What's interesting, Q, is like, when you work in the corporate world, every year you have compliance training. Every year you have sexual harassment training. Every year you have a national or global sales meeting and then there's training there. But give me one instance where you've had a mandatory diversity training, even just one time a year. I know we don't have enough time to wait, but I'll tell you, not too many people have it, let alone most companies. They might have it as an option. It's not
almost
mandatory.
Never. Almost
right?
never.
And so to be able to have a mandatory diversity type of program, and the reason why I like the diversity title is because we can maneuver based on the environment, the situation, and the culture, etc., to cater to a certain situation. But we have the opportunity to start with a mandate of training with the executive level team, and then mandate it to the rest of the company. And to me, that's amazing that we're able to do something like that, starting from scratch, with nothing, no foundation. I've never had it ever. And the CEO mentioned it, he's embarrassed to even say that there was not even an optional training, right?
Wow.
That we had to discuss, diversity amongst even the leadership team, right? So no wonder why certain teams look the way they do, because we like to call it unconscious bias. They're biased towards what they know, right? And who they know, thinking that they're doing the right thing because nobody has ever told them really that they were wrong. And it's not that they were wrong, it's just that they were feeding into the same systematic process over and over and over, right? And I think, I have a problem when somebody says that it's not the system that's causing racism. I can go on and talk about that, but we know that certain things are built in because certain people are either threatened or they want to stay at the top. We know that. And the crazy thing is that we, as a Black community, have more power than we give ourselves credit for. And we could definitely do a lot more if we all collectively work together. And I think that's what we've showcased here, at DIG at Natera, because my team is diverse: Latinos, women, gay men, gay women. It's very diverse. And you talk about the power that we have on some of the things we've been able to move in the last 5 months. It's just been extraordinary.
It's so incredibly important, listening to you describe your team, that we support one another. And that's the thing that you touched on, and I think is so important, that you have this very diverse group that understands the power of unity and of understanding, having empathy for and support for each other's struggles, because all of our struggles aren't the same, but they are all very real. And to accept and respect the struggles that others have to deal with, and to be able to support each other in that way, I think adds to what you said with regards to the power that we have when we're together. I've been having conversations, I think even if it wasn't our last show, the show before that, where there was a prominent, articulate, educated Black man on a cable TV news show saying that diversity training was counterproductive, that systemic racism didn't exist. And speaking for all Black people, he said that Black people were tired of being the subject of diversity training and being looked at as victims and all this stuff. And it's just like, man, we misplace our pride sometimes. Because I think this man was attempting to appear, proud. I don't need your sympathy, and I don't need your, you know what I mean? I don't need you to feel sorry for, and there's no such thing as white privilege, and there's no such thing as systemic racism, and companies need to do away with diversity training because it adds to the racism. And it's like, we have to educate ourselves more. We have to educate and help and support each other more. Have you had any instances where you had kind of that counterculture presented to not tear down, but be against what it is that you're trying to do?
Right now it hasn't been brought to my attention in that fashion where it's been blatant, I should say. But I think those that, as I was mentioning before, those that haven't responded, not that I'm expecting everybody to send me email, text, phone call to pat me on the back, but I think that says a lot about an individual's character, of what you say and what you don't say. People that are appearing or not appearing on some of the events, people that are providing feedback or not providing feedback. You have a feeling of certain individuals that are looking for you to fail, not merely because they're jealous and they feel like they're competing against you as an individual, but because you're Black, because you're, Latino, because you're, gay, whatever the case may be, right? And it shouldn't be like that. And the reason I disagree with, what that individual was saying that you were mentioning, and I'm not going to give credit to the person's name, but
exactly, I said it before, I'm not going to say it again.
The reason why I disagree with that, man, is because it's not just a psyche of an individual feeling like that somebody's being racist towards them. It's that physical act of somebody doing something or verbally saying something to somebody that's racist. Mm-hmm. They may not necessarily know it, or sometimes they do, but the reason why I call it systematic. Now, what people have their own version of what systematic means, but at the end of the day, the system means it's a process. There's a start and then there's a beginning. Somebody had to do some teaching, right? And that's why we have even a reform that we're trying to do with even the criminal justice system, right? Because there's a system that's in place that kind of outlines and targets mostly Black people, mm-hmm. right? And I don't care what you want to say or how, just go to your local jail or prison in that area, and you're going to easily see that the population is mostly Black and Latinos. And most of them are because of petty crimes that they probably shouldn't even be locked up, for what they did. Mm-hmm. But that's a whole different topic and conversation. I just think that, when people make comments like that, especially when they are supposed to be very intelligent, I feel like is that a marketing ploy to try to get more, visibility or of some sort? Because there's not one black person that has at one point felt like they've been treated racist or unfair because of merely because of the color of their skin. And if anybody feels that way, then to me, that person is a liar.
Unless they've been incredibly sheltered, never left their hometown or their neighborhood and only been around their family and people that look like them, you'd have an impossible time trying to convince me, that you've never experienced any type of inkling of being treated differently, viewed differently, looked at differently. Like the first time I got on the shuttle at Bowling Green, it was very, very clear that there were some people on there that had never seen anybody that looked like us before. And when I got into my Black Studies class, I had a classmate who was from BG who had actually never seen a black person in real life before. And he expressed that. We were in Dr. Jack Taylor's class, and he expressed that to me. And our first conversations were really contentious and not cool. We ended up being really cool by the end of it, but he was sincerely ignorant of some things and would say some things out loud in class where you would just be like, dude, you couldn't have just said that out loud. So like you said, Mike, we could talk about this stuff for 5 more hours, but I don't want to keep you from the family for too long. If people want to learn more about what you're doing or support in any way, where are some places they can go find some more information and be supportive of the cause that you guys are pushing forward?
Yeah, so we do have a Facebook, Natera.com is our website for the company. We do try to have some different social postings on Facebook. A lot of the things that I'm doing now is mostly for the employees internally, but we will showcase like external speakers that are coming in to motivate or provide their perspective. I think we're also, I know we're also on LinkedIn. Look for Natera Inc. on LinkedIn, and definitely follow us because we always have some really exciting news that's coming out with the technology that we have that's proprietary only to us. And on top of that, one of the things that I wanted to do, as I mentioned, the vision was to showcase our employees of color. And we are going to be posting, different individuals throughout the company on our Instagram or on our at least Facebook and LinkedIn. Some of the partnerships that we have, especially with the HBCUs and that community, they'll be posted on both Facebook and on LinkedIn. But by all means, please continue to follow. We're a public company, so you can see us on the stocks as our stocks continue to rise. And I think it's going to rise even more as we become more diverse and embrace diversity and inclusion for the years to come. So it's a very exciting time for me and for the organization, I think.
Yeah, it means the world to me that you were able to take some time away from the family and make some time to talk with me, Mike. I'm super proud of you, brother, and the things that you are doing within Natera and within the community are super important. They're vital. I'm glad that you saw the value in it, that you saw that pressure and that responsibility as necessary, and that you took that on your shoulders. And please keep doing what you're doing, man. For everybody that tuned in, we appreciate you tuning in to Civic Cipher. Again, I'm your host, Q Ward. Check us out, civiccipher.com, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at Civic Cipher. There are ways to donate and give back and support the show. You guys are our lifeline. We do this for our community. We are funded and upheld by the community as well. Until next time, peace.